Hey babes, and welcome to Gore&Gossip. I'm Nicole.
And I'm Jaurdyn, and this is your weekly deep dive into all things terrifying true crime cases, cold blooded killers, and the occasional creepy conspiracy.
Plus haunted dolls, cursed mirrors, and that one time your aunt swore her house was built on a portal to the underworld.
If it's bloody, bizarre, or just plain bone chilling, we're talking about it.
And yes, we're bringing the gossip too. Because what's a murder without a little side eye?
So lock the doors, light a candle,
and let's get into it. Hi y'all.
How we good?
You get us again this week.
Want to know why?
Whoop, whoop. It's special.
It's very special.
It's our 1 year anniversary.
1 year of Gore&Gossip. I'm so happy.
I know. Thank you guys so much for everybody who has stayed with us since the beginning and listens and tunes in every week. We honestly, and even the weeks that were a little slow, we appreciate it so much.
Seriously, I mean, this just started as like Nicole and I just needing a little passion project.
Yeah.
And now I'm like so happy that we like took a chance on ourselves to do it, because like this is like my little sunshine of the week, getting to record with you and getting to upload it. It's just, I don't know. I'm just really happy.
This was something that we talked about for probably a couple of months before we actually pulled the trigger on doing it. And we were both in like kind of like turning points in our lives, and we were like, you know what, like let's do it. Like we both are like changing things right now, like, and we've changed more things since then.
And there's more changes to come, but like still,
we're very, very happy that this has been a consistent for us, and this is something that we love to do, and we hope you guys love us doing it.
Exactly. So just very grateful and thankful for you guys, and also
so grateful
for being such a great co-host, and
to Jaurdyn for being so amazing and doing all of the editing, because Lord knows I'm not great at it.
You did great for that one episode that I couldn't edit.
I tried. Honestly, our platform that we use definitely helps a lot. They've come a long way in a year since we started using it, so
I know, they really have.
It was rough when we first started doing it.
I was so confused. I didn't understand anything, and now it's just like gotten easier, and I'm like, I like this actually.
Yeah, it really wasn't that bad when I did do that most recent episode, or the one episode recently. So
yeah.
We don't have a lot to talk about. There's no like shows really that like we're both crazy about. She's still in the middle. Well, she did finish A Court of Mist and Fury and A Court of Wings. Hello. This Wings and Ruin. I don't know. Akawar. We're just going to say Akawar because I literally cannot say it any other way. It just gets stuck in my mouth. One of those things.
Yeah. And then I only have like an hour and 45 left in A Court of Silver Flames.
Wait, did you skip Frost and Starlight?
No. Frost and Starlight.
Oh, I was about to be like, I'm going to beat you if you just skipped Frost and Starlight. Isn't it like so light and like refreshing though after Akawar? You don't like it? I'm going to beat you anyway.
No, I like it, but I feel like it's not gonna end like that. Like something bad is gonna happen, because it's so good right now and so pure, and like everyone's getting along, and I know the next novel is not as insane. So
yeah, it's pretty insane. I don't want to I honestly can't remember how it actually ends, but I don't think it ends like badly, because A Court of Silver and Flames doesn't necessarily it has like stuff in it. It does have some bad stuff in it, but like it's not like big plot like ACOTAR through Akawar. Like they're kind of like an in-between moving plot point books, especially like Frost and Starlight. That's like her novella to kind of like give a bit of a breather. A Court of Silver and Flames is kind of also kind of a setup. There's stuff that happens in it, but it's there. I won't get too into it, but there's stuff that happens. It's not like crazy though.
Can I guess?
Sure.
Lucian is actually Tamlin.
No. Although, that's a great theory for later, but not for what you're about to read. That's a great theory for like 6 or 7.
Because they have not been in the same room together
In a while.
in a long time. And like Lucian is not the same.
Also, Lucian is not the same because a lot of shit happened to him.
Okay, but
he's
yeah,
dealing
but
with
like
PTSD. He's also dealing with a mate who hates him. Sorry for any spoilers.
I would hate him too.
Yeah. And he's just trying to find his place in life because he doesn't have a place at Tamlin's side anymore because Tamlin has basically lost his mind.
It's a girl.
I
Get
will tell
over
you
it.
right now, like, we don't see Tamlin in like A Court of Silver and Flames. Like, he's just not thought. I don't know if
like
we're gonna
that.
see him in 6 or 7. She has not said anything about him. I don't know if we just don't care about his character development anymore.
So you like that?
He's kind of like, just there. Like, just don't worry about him right now.
Okay.
Yeah, there's not much going on with him. There's not even much going on with Lucian, to be quite honest with you, in those books. Like, there's a little bit, but not much.
Okay. I'll just sit tight and wait, I guess.
Truthfully, we're just going to have to sit tight and wait for 6 and 7 because...
That's why I'm, like, taking my time with Court of Frost and Starlight because it's so short, and I know the next one... I don't know if I'll like the POV, so we'll figure it out. I
will say that I'm not a hater per se anymore. It definitely made me understand her, but I still have strong mixed feelings.
Okay.
I'll say it like that. Other people, it made them love her and really like be able to understand and like get inside her head and kind of connect with her on that level. I understand her and I can respect that. Like, I understand where her head is at now, and she does some things nope, not gonna say that. I'm just gonna leave it at that because if I say too much now, I'm gonna give too much away for other stuff. So just leave it at that.
Okay.
Because you have to read that and then you have to go to Crescent City. So
apparently I need to read Crescent City before the new one comes out.
Yeah, she does. Everybody tell her she does. Because if you don't, there's going to be some things that'll probably happen that you're going to be like, what the fuck? There's going to be a lot of information that you're going to miss.
Did Sarah say that? Or is this just people guessing?
No, like quite literally. There's stuff that you're going to miss.
Oh. Okay. I guess.
Yeah.
I guess I'll take a chance on Zootopia.
Yeah. She's so stuck on the Zootopia thing.
I don't know if I'll like it.
Oh, God. Okay, I don't want to keep going too much because we do have a bit of a long one. This is probably, I'm going to say probably, but it's definitely probably going to end up being 2 parts. I already have like a cutoff point. So I think we're going to end up making this a 2-parter because it's an anniversary episode. I wanted to give you guys something a little special, a little bit long, and something a bit more serious. I know we love to do our fun folklore and different kinds of stuff, but we're going to give you a serious one this time.
Let's get into it.
So let's get into it because I don't want to take up too much more time. I definitely had something else that I want to talk about too, but I can't remember. And it's probably for the better. So when we do part 2, I'll probably remember. All right. June 7th, 2021. It was a warm Monday evening in Colton County, South Carolina. Just after 10 p.m., a 911 dispatcher answered a call that would become one of the most recognizable recordings in modern true crime. The caller sounded frantic. He told dispatchers his wife and youngest son had been shot. He said he had just returned home to the family's hunting property known as Moselle and discovered them near the dog's kennel. The caller was 53-year-old attorney Alex Murdaugh. Now, if you've heard about this, you know.
Is it Murdaugh or is it Murdaugh?
Murdaugh? Maybe Murdaugh.
I think it's Murdaugh.
Because you're right. It's Murdaugh. I don't know why I'm saying Murdaugh.
Because I watched all the documentaries on this case.
You are correct. Thank you. Thank you for thank you for correcting me. You are correct. I don't know why I said Murdaugh.
Okay.
At that moment, law enforcement believed they were responding to what appeared to be the tragic murders of a prominent local family. No one could have predicted that the investigation would eventually uncover years of financial fraud suspicious deaths, failed institutions, and allegations that would completely reshape public trust in one of South Carolina's most powerful legal families. No one could have predicted that. I'll leave that there. This story isn't just about a double homicide. It's about power. It's about reputation. It's about the influence a single family held over an entire region for nearly a century. And it's about what happens when that influence begins to crack. Before we can understand what happened at Moselle that night, we need to understand why the Murdaugh family name carried so much weight. Because this wasn't simply the story of one attorney accused of murdering his wife and son. For generations, the Murdaugh family had become synonymous with South Carolina Low Country. To understand Alex Murdaugh, we first have to understand the world he inherited. The South Carolina Low Country stretches across the state's southeastern coast and is known for its marshes, winding rivers, hunting plantations, and small, tightly connected communities. It's a region where families often know each other for generations, and reputations can shape opportunities, elections, and careers, as we so very often see in smaller towns, smaller living kind of areas. At the center of this story is Hampton County, a largely rural county. Sorry, I can't say rural, so this is going to be even worse. For decades, revolved around agriculture, timber, and local business. It's the kind of place where people recognize your last name before they know you first. For nearly a century, one last name stood above almost all the others. Murdaugh. I did it again. Murdaugh. I'll get it. I promise. It's fine. We'll figure it out. The family's influence began with Roundup. Literally, I'm so sorry, you guys. I'm so sorry. The family's influence began with Randolph Murdaugh Sr., who founded what would become the family's law practice in Hampton County in the early 1900s. So this has been a long time they've been around. In 1920, he was elected solicitor. I know. I don't know why I put that word in. He was elected attorney for South Carolina's 14th Judicial Circuit. In South Carolina, a solicitor functions much like a district attorney in many other states, prosecuting criminal cases on behalf of the state. Randolph Murdaugh Sr. held that office until his death in 1940. So that's 20 years of holding a seat, which is a long time. And then he was followed by his son, Randolph Buster Murdaugh Jr., who served as solicitor for nearly 5 decades. That's a long time.
That's insane. 50
That's
years.
A long time, guys. That's long. Then came Randolph Murdaugh III, Alex's father, who also held that position. For 87 consecutive years, a member of the Murdaugh family served as solicitor for the 14th Judicial Circuit. Now let's think about that for a moment. I already said that's a long time, but from 1920 until 2006, there was never a time when someone named Murdaugh wasn't the chief prosecutor for this region. That's not just a family tradition. That's an institution.
Yeah.
That's what it is. While serving as solicitors, the family also built a successful private law practice that handled civil litigation, particularly personal injury and wrongful death cases. Over the decade, the firm earned a reputation for securing substantial settlements, making the Murdaughs both influential and wealthy. Their legal work placed them in a constant contact with judges, law enforcement officers, elected officials, and business leaders. Many of those professional relationships stretched across generations. So this is when you see those close-knit communities, those close-knit counties even, where there's basically legacy families that have been there they'll tell you since the founding time, and they're just a name that's synonymous with the town. There's definitely going to be tons of that, not just them in that area. At the same time, their prominence created a perception that the family had access, influence, and connections unlike those available to most residents. Like I said, legacy families, basically. Whether that perception was always accurate is something we'll examine throughout this case. Alex Murdaugh grew up inside that world. He wasn't simply the son of a lawyer, he was the son of a dynasty. By the time he became an attorney himself, because what else was he going to do? Much of his future had already been written. He joined the family law firm, which eventually became known as Peters, Murdaugh, Parker, Eltroth, and Dietrich, or PMPED, or as I like to say, pimped.
Pipped.
Pimped. Or pimped, whatever, however you want to say it. But I like pimped. Like generations before him, he specialized in civil litigation. Did I say that right? Civil litigation. Yeah, I don't know. Words are just not rolling out right now, so it's fine. Representing clients injured in accidents and helping families pursue wrongful death claims. To many in Hampton County, Alex appeared to be exactly what you would expect from someone carrying the Murdaugh family name. He was married to his college sweetheart, Maggie. Together they had 2 sons, Buster and Paul. Buster's name is also Randolph. Go figure. Go figure.
Go figure.
The family owned multiple properties, including Moselle, a sprawling hunting estate of more than 1,700 acres located near Islandton, South Carolina. 1,700 acres.
That's insane.
For a hunting estate, that makes sense when you think about it. But like, still, that's crazy.
A hunting estate, though, like, that's insane.
Yeah. That's like something that like you hear about like the royals doing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like how they have their like hunting lodges, but they're really just huge estates with like hundreds of acres, thousands of acres. Yeah. That's the same thing.
Yeah, that's literally where my head went to. I'm like, this
right?
is like the royal family like hunting lodge.
Yeah. I can't even think of like what the name of like their most famous one is. But yeah, that's what it made me think of. Friends describe Moselle as a place where family gatherings, hunting trips, and social events regularly took place. On the surface, the Murdaugh's family projected the image of a successful Southern family, financially secure, well-connected, deeply rooted in the community, but appearances can be deceiving, as we know. By the summer of 2021, pressure had begun mounting around Alex from multiple directions. Some of those pressures were public, others were completely hidden. And within a matter of months, investigators would begin uncovering a chain of events that reached far beyond the murders at Moselle. And as we move on to the next part, we're going to take a step back 2 years before those murders, actually, because many investigators, journalists, if you know what I'm about to talk about, you know this is really, really sad. Legal analysts even believe that the modern collapse of their Murdaugh family dynasty truly began during February 2019 on a cold night when a group of young friends climbed into a boat after an evening of drinking. This is really sad. This is not the stepping stone. This is a part of it. And this is in its own right a very sad story.
Yeah.
Very sad case. That night would leave one young woman dead. It would expose the Murdaugh family to unprecedented public scrutiny, and it would place Alex Murdaugh under a level of financial and legal pressure unlike anything he had experienced before. To understand the murders, we first have to understand that boat crash. Before the murders at Moselle, before the financial indictments, and before Alex Murdaugh's name became known across the country, there was another death, and her name was Mallory Beach. And Mallory was just 19 years old. 19? You're a child. You were still a child. She had grown up in South Carolina's Hampton County, graduated from Wade Hampton High School, and was attending college while working at a local clothing store. So, your typical run-of-the-mill, small-town family girl. People described her as being outgoing, affectionate, and deeply connected to her friends and family. People loved her. She was the kind of person whose social life overlapped with many of the same families that she had known for years. That included the Murdaughs. On the evening of February 23rd, 2019, Mallory joined 5 friends for what was supposed to be a night out. The group consisted of 3 couples. Mallory was there with her boyfriend, Anthony Cook. Anthony's cousin, Connor Cook, was there with his girlfriend, Miley Altman. And Paul Murdaugh was there with his girlfriend, Morgan Dowdy? Something like that.
Yeah, Dowdy.
I think it's Dowdy. All 6 were young. Most of them had grown up around one another, their families knew one another, and they had spent time together before. Nothing about the group getting together that night would have seemed particularly unusual, probably just a normal hangout. But what made that night dangerous was the combination of alcohol, a boat, darkness, cold weather, and a growing conflict over who was in control. Earlier that evening, Paul purchased alcohol from a Parker's convenience store in Ridgeland. Paul was 19 as well, and therefore he was too young to legally buy it. Surveillance footage showed him using the driver's license of his older brother Buster, who was over the age of 21. And because both of the brothers had similar physical features, the transaction went through. Probably just some young person, whatever, working the front desk or the cashier rep who literally didn't give a shit.
Yeah, literally. Didn't look closely enough.
Yeah, just briefly looked, saw the name, said, yeah, okay. The purchase would later become one of the central issues in the civil lawsuits that followed Mallory's death, and rightfully so. The group gathered at the Murdaugh family river property near the Okay, I tried to say this earlier, and I don't know if I'm going to say it right, so bear with me. Chisesi?
Good job.
I think it's Chisesi.
It's Chisesi.
Okay.
Good job.
I take a guess. At the Chisesi River. From there, they boarded a 17-foot Sea Hunt Central Console boat owned by Alex Murdaugh, so by Paul's dad. They planned to travel by water to an oyster roast on Pocky Island. Now, if you don't know what a Sea Hunt Center Console boat is, it's literally just an open boat, with the steering wheel off to one side. There's no
it's
no cover
fishing
or anything
boat,
kind
of.
Yeah.
But a little more fishing, elevated. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a smaller fishing boat, basically. For listeners unfamiliar with the area, this was not just a short ride across a calm neighborhood lake. The South Carolina low country is filled with rivers, tidal creeks, marshes, bridges, sandbars, and waterways that can be difficult to navigate even during daylight because it's not the easiest area. I know it's really funny comparison, but if you've ever watched Outer Banks, the show on Netflix, that's technically based in North Carolina, the Outer Banks, but it is kind of like that. Or if you've seen Where the Crawdads Sing, also kind of a similar tons of waterways throughout it.
Yeah.
Hold on, lost my spot. Okay. That night, the group would be traveling after dark. The temperature was cold, the water was colder, and alcohol was being consumed before and during the trip. To be honest, why are we going to any kind of oyster roasting thing somewhere cold?
Listen,
in the middle of winter.
I'm not going to say I don't condone this behavior at all. I don't condone driving a boat while drunk or any of that. I understand the appeal of what is this, a Friday night?
Yeah.
Saturday night, going out into the woods for oyster bake. It sounds so fun. I feel like I've gone to a campfire in December.
Yeah.
In Montana.
Yeah. I think I'm just a baby, to be quite honest with you. The sound of going anywhere out in the cold like that is just,
you're like,
no, thank you, I'm good. Goodbye. So yeah, I guess I do understand, especially you're young, you're bored, you want something to do, it's winter time, now this allure of a fun party, basically. Yeah, I get it.
But also use your brain a little bit. But
yeah, exactly.
They are teens, so.
True, very true. That night, the group would be traveling after dark. The temperature was cold, the water was colder, and alcohol was being consumed before and during the trip. According to later accounts from the surviving passengers, Paul was frequently behind the wheel of the boat. Now, that's just according to what the surviving passengers have said to the police. Connor was also reportedly operating it at different points during the evening, according to them. That distinction, though, would become extremely important after the crash because determining who had been driving at the moment of impact would become one of the central questions in that investigation. The group reached the oyster roast and spent several hours there. Witness statements and later court filings described Paul as becoming increasingly intoxicated as the night continued. The friends eventually returned to the boat to begin the trip home, but instead of traveling directly back to the river house, they made another stop. At approximately 1 o'clock in the morning, they docked in downtown Beaufort. Paul and Connor entered Luther's Rare and Well Done, which is a waterfront bar, and the others remained kind of near the boat. Surveillance footage later shows Paul and Connor inside the bar, ordering drinks, including shots, and whatever before they returned to the dock, which is absolutely insane. By that point, several of the passengers were reportedly uncomfortable with Paul's condition and wanted someone else to take control of the boat. According to statements later given by the survivors again, Paul's behavior had become kind of erratic. They said he would leave the wheel unattended. At times, the boat allegedly would slow almost to like a stop. At other times, Paul accelerated suddenly, and the passengers repeatedly had asked him to let Connor or Anthony drive. According to their accounts, Paul refused, and there were also arguments aboard the boat. Morgan later described Paul becoming verbally and physically aggressive toward her during the return trip. Again, if you don't remember, Morgan was his girlfriend. The group was cold, frustrated, and frightened. They were traveling through dark waterways in the early hours of the morning, while the person they believed was controlling the boat appeared heavily intoxicated. Anthony Cook later recalled focusing on Mallory and just trying to keep her warm. The 6 friends had begun the evening together, and by this point the mood had changed completely. At approximately 2:17 in the morning on February 24th, the boat approached the Archers Creek Bridge near Paris Island. The boat struck a bridge piling. The force of the impact threw passengers around the vessel, and Mallory was ejected into the water. When the boat stopped, the survivors immediately realized that she was missing. The impact had caused extensive damage. Several passengers were injured. Connor Cook suffered a broken jaw and injuries to his face. Others had cuts and bruises or additional trauma. Anthony remained at the scene, desperate to find Mallory. The water beneath and surrounding the bridge was dark. The current was moving. Visibility was extremely limited, and Mallory did not respond at all when her friends had called for her. Emergency services were contacted. The first responders who arrived were confronted with the damaged boat, injured and intoxicated passengers, conflicting information, and one missing woman. From the beginning, there was confusion over who had been driving. And I don't necessarily want to say confusion, just conflicting information.
Yeah.
I guess you could say confusion. The surviving passengers would later say that Paul had been operating the boat when it struck. But at the scene and during the hospital response, investigators had also heard suggestions that Connor might have been driving. Now, again, there was some conflict between them, so trying to see if Paul would give up steering, so who knows. That uncertainty, though, became one of the most controversial aspects of that early investigation. Anthony Cook was recorded speaking to a responding officer near the crash site, and he was very visibly distraught. He identified Paul as the person driving the boat and expressed anger about what had happened. And he had also made a comment suggesting that Paul would avoid consequences because of his family. And that reaction, of course, does not come from nowhere. The Murdaugh family name was well known among the law enforcement officers, attorneys, and residents of the region. And within a short time, several members of the Murdaugh family became involved. Alex Murdaugh obviously arrived at the hospital. So did his father, Randolph Murdaugh III. I almost said third. Okay. He, who had served as the elected solicitor for, like we had said, for the 14th Judicial Circuit for approximately 2 decades. So he was in for 2 decades, his father. Alex's brother, attorney Randy Murdaugh, the 4th, I was thinking about the Roman numeral, was also involved in communications following the crash. The presence of Murdaugh attorneys at the hospital intensified the surviving passenger concerns. According to later statements and lawsuits, Alex moved between the hospital rooms where the young people were being treated. Some passengers claimed he tried to speak with them about who had been driving. The Murdaugh family and the representatives disputed allegations that they had improperly pressured witnesses or attempted to control the investigation. It's important to separate what is documented from what is alleged. They said that he was trying to talk to them, but Alex and their attorneys were saying, no, he just wanted to check on everybody. So
the documentary that they have on HBO Max about this dives into it. And like they say that Alex was like going to their hospital rooms and being like, oh, you saw my son. You saw that it was actually, is it Cooper that he said was driving?
Connor.
They were like, you saw Connor driving, right? Like Connor was driving. Like it wasn't my son that was driving. Like going to each person.
Yep.
And it's so disgusting because they weren't even concerned about Mallory.
Nope. They were just trying to solidify. Everybody's saying that it was Connor when we don't know if that's really what happened.
Exactly.
Especially when not everybody was fully saying that, because there's on record of people saying that it was Paul. There's people saying it might have been Connor. It could have been Connor trying to take the wheel from Paul. Who knows? And maybe they just didn't want to talk. Maybe they were fighting for control and nobody wants to admit that.
Or like he stepped away from the boat because remember, like it would slow down and like he stepped away from the steering wheel.
Yeah,
and so
Connor could have tried
like,
to grab
fixed
it. We can sit here and come up with hypothesis after hypothesis or whatever you want to say, but we don't actually know. We weren't there. But those accusations became part of subsequent civil litigation. So like those accusations of all of that happening does go to a civil suit later. Connor Cook eventually filed his own lawsuit, actually, alleging the members of the Murdaugh family and people connected to them had attempted to make him appear responsible for the crash. So it goes back to us talking about the documentary and all of those possible scenarios. Those claims were allegations in civil court, not criminal findings. Still, they did contribute to the public belief that the family's influence may have affected the initial response. There was also questions about how evidence was being handled. Paul was treated at the hospital after the crash. His level of intoxication became very relevant to the investigation, but no field sobriety test was being conducted at the scene because they had very quickly transported him for medical care. However, blood was collected as part of his hospital treatment, and the results indicated a very high level of alcohol in his system several hours after the crash. So we're several hours later, and he still has a high level of alcohol in his system, brother.
Absolutely shablammy.
Be so for real. Yeah.
Still, like hours after the incident.
Be so for real. Even if you're saying that you weren't at the wheel at the time of the accident, you were saying that you were driving it at some point during the night. And your levels are indicating that you shouldn't have been driving it at all. So, mistake number one. And then also we're going to give it to the next person that's drunk off his ass too. Okay.
Yeah, make it make sense.
All right. Well, we'll leave that there. Investigators also had to determine who had been positioned near the controls or whether the passengers' injuries could help establish where each person had been standing. And the physical layout of the boat basically complicated that. So they're trying to figure out, okay, like if this person was here, does that mean that their injuries would make sense for where they were? Basically trying to recreate it and how they would have gotten injured. But because it was an open center console vessel and you could move around, there was no enclosed like driver's seat area. And that would basically mean that one person isn't in a fixed position. So you don't actually know. Like literally anything could happen to anybody at that point in time. Like they could have like happened to move like right before, or like the crash could have sent them a different way than we'd think it would send them, because of it being an open center console. Witness testimony, therefore, became extremely important in this matter. And while investigators examined the boat and interviewed survivors, the search for Mallory continued. Divers, law enforcement officers, volunteers, boat, aircraft, and search crews spent days looking for her through the surrounding waterways and marshes, and Mallory's family waited for the news. The search lasted more than a week, and on March 3rd, 2019, Mallory's body was found in a marshy area several miles from the crash site. Remember, there's current in this area, so that's why. The official cause of death was drowning caused by injuries sustained in the boat crash. Mallory's disappearance had become a regional news story. The discovery of her body changed the case from a boating accident with injuries into a death investigation. It also placed Paul Murdaugh and his family under a level of public attention that they had not experienced before. On April 18th, 2019, what would have been Mallory's 20th birthday, fellow Aries, a grand jury indicted Paul on 3 felony charges. 1 count accused him of boating under the influence, causing Mallory's death. 2 additional counts accused him of boating under the influence, causing great bodily injury to other passengers. And of course, he pled not guilty. He surrendered, though, was booked, and was released on bond while awaiting trial. Now, because Paul died in June of 2021, before the criminal case could ever be tried, there was no jury ever determined whether the state had proven those charges beyond a reasonable doubt. So obviously, he was never charged. He was just accused and indicted, and that's it. He was never convicted, though. For Mallory's family, the criminal case was only one part of the effort to obtain accountability. Her mother, Renee Beach, filed a wrongful death lawsuit. A wrongful death case is a civil action rather than a criminal prosecution, we know, and its purpose is not to send anyone to prison, but it allows the deceased person's family or estate to seek financial damages from people or other businesses that they believe contributed to the death. And we know civil litigation can take forever. They will literally try, especially big corporations, they will try to tie you up as long as they can because they know that they have unlimited resources when it comes to that. Most of the time. Not all the time. Sometimes they really will just give you what you want and let you go. And the lawsuit named multiple defendants. Those claims changed over time as the parties were added, dismissed, or reached settlements. The defendants included members of the Murdaugh family and businesses connected to the sale and provision of alcohol. So one of the central defendants was the Parker's Corporation, the company that operated the convenience store where Paul purchased alcohol illegally using Buster's identification. The lawsuit also included allegations involving ownership of the boat, access to alcohol, and the actions of adults who allegedly allowed or enabled underage drinking, i.e. the owner of the boat. Buster Murdaugh was brought into the case because Paul had used his driver's license. So not only was he at fault, not only was Parker's Corporation at fault for selling him, Buster was at fault for giving him his license. I mean, you can say he stole it from you, but still he had your license.
Still, he had it. You didn't notice like your license missing? Come on.
Yeah, exactly. Maggie and Alex faced claims connected to the boat and the circumstances surrounding its use. The family's attorney disputed liability and contested portions of the lawsuit, of course, and civil attorney Mark Tinsley represented Mallory's family. Well, Tinsley was not only trying to establish what happened on the boat, but he was also trying to determine how much money might be available if the Beach family obtained a judgment. This is important. This is why these two scenarios start to connect. And that meant examining Alex Murdaugh's finances. Sorry, I keep wanting to say like Murdaugh family names.
Yeah.
During civil litigation, a defendant's financial condition can become relevant, particularly when the parties are discussing damages, insurance coverage, or the possibility of a settlement. Alex's attorney maintained that he did not have the financial resources some people assumed that he possessed, simply because he was an attorney for the family. Whatever. They're saying like, oh, he doesn't have as much available as you would think that he does. His money's all tied up. Okay. And Tinsley was skeptical. The Murdaugh family had land, professional status, a successful law practice, and the appearance of wealth. And Tinsley wanted the documentation on that. He said, I want them papers. Now,
show me receipts.
Yeah, that's exactly. Receipts. Now, he saw financial records that could show Alex's income, accounts, assets, debts, and transfers. This created a bit of a problem for Alex that had very little to do with the boat itself. See, by 2021, Alex had spent years stealing from his clients and his law firm. Oh yeah, we're out on that bitch right now, baby. We're out on him right now. This is something that didn't come out during this civil suit.
Yeah.
It came out much later. But there was like some stuff that you were able to tell from the civil suit. We'll get into it.
Yeah.
Anyway, he had created fraudulent disbursement records. He had deposited funds into accounts he controlled. Some stolen money had passed through an account called Forge, a name designed to resemble a legitimate settlement planning company. The financial structure was complicated, but the underlying method was often simple. A client was entitled to money. Alex would control or influence the payment process, and he redirected some or all of that money for his own use. And the Beach lawsuit threatened to force him to open his personal finances for examination. That did not mean that the civil attorneys already knew the full scale of his thefts, because they didn't, but financial disclosure could have revealed inconsistencies that were going to be very difficult for him to explain, because it would show like money entering or leaving accounts, and it could reveal like debts that didn't match his income or anything like that. It could also expose transfers involving clients or cases. So it couldn't show everything. It would just be like basically handing over like bank account records and like showing like the like money entering and leaving and like any debts that are coming out, like kind of almost like a credit check of sorts. Like think about it like that almost.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't have shown the full truth of everything, but it definitely would have shown some shady ass shit.
Definitely.
And it would also challenge Alex's claim that he lacked the resources to pay a substantial judgment. A hearing connected to the Beach litigation was scheduled for June 10th, 2021. And among the issues expected to be addressed was the effort to obtain more complete information about Alex's finances. Maggie and Paul were killed 3 days before that hearing.
What the fuck? What a diabolical man. Not like killing your family over this is insane.
Yeah. And Alex
killing your family period is insane. But like,
oh yeah,
just because your finances are going to come out and you're going to be exposed as a fraud, hey, guess what? Everyone's got to go. That's insane.
Why this was the route that was chosen?
Just go to jail. Just go to jail.
For like, I don't know. I don't know how in someone's tiny little mind that this is where they jump to with trying to figure out how to cover up their own indiscretions and failures. Like,
literally, I don't understand it.
I mean, you at the very least could have just been like, fuck it, Paul, you're gonna take the fall. You gotta, we're just gonna pay. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
Yeah.
But because of that, and his reputation is too precious to him.
Yeah. Anyway, at Alex's later murder trial, prosecutors argued that the boat crash lawsuit was one part of the financial pressure closing in on him. It wasn't the only source of pressure, though. On the morning of June 7th, Alex had also been confronted at his law firm about missing legal fees from another case. So his actions were starting to catch up with him, and it was all coming out all at once. His finances were becoming a problem from more than one direction. The prosecution did not argue that Mallory's family caused the murders or that the lawsuit alone explained everything. Their position was that the civil suit threatened to expose Alex at a time when his law firm was also beginning to ask questions. So it was just everything, like I said, just falling in around him at once. Because your actions do fucking catch up with you. Period. They described these overlapping pressures as a gathering storm. Defense challenged that theory. Alex's attorneys argued that murdering Maggie and Paul would not make the boat case disappear. If anything, the deaths brought greater attention to the family. They also argued that financial crimes did not logically prove that Alex was capable of murdering his wife and son. You're not wrong, but you're also not correct, because money will make people do crazy shit sometimes. And that disagreement would later become one of the central battles of the murder trial. Could evidence of Alex's financial thefts help explain a motive for murder? Or did it simply prejudice the jury for showing that he had committed other serious crimes? Before the murders, the Beach lawsuit had already changed the Murdaugh family's position in the community. For generations, the family had been associated with the legal system. Now, one of their own was facing felony charges, and that family that had prosecuted other people was defending its youngest son. The attorneys who had spent their careers questioning witnesses were now being accused of influencing them. The people accustomed to controlling legal strategy were now being examined by lawyers from outside their immediate circle. And Mallory Beach's death did not create Alex Murdaugh's financial crimes. Those schemes had been operating for years. But the litigation that followed her death applied pressure to a structure already filled with hidden weaknesses. And Mallory would never and should never be reduced to the event that began Alex's downfall. Do I think that it is a part of it? Absolutely. It's a big part of it. But it'll never be reduced to just being one part of it. Or as it's just...
it's a catalyst.
Yeah. Yeah, it's basically the catalyst. It's a horrid event. It's like when one horrid event just starts the catalyst of more horrid events.
Yeah.
That's basically what this is. She was not a plot point in the Murdaugh story. She was a 19-year-old woman whose life... She's a child.
Not a woman.
Whose life ended during a night that should have concluded with her returning home to her family. And her family's pursuit of answers became one of the forces that made it more difficult for Alex to keep his finances. Honestly, if anything, it was her family that really made the catalyst happen, and good for them.
Honestly, I would do the same. I don't think I would rest until something came out that proved that he was at fault for it.
Yeah, there had to be something.
Yeah.
Years later, the Beach family and other plaintiffs reached substantial civil settlements with various defendants. So in 2023, Parker's insurers agreed to a settlement valued at $15 million for the Beach family because they were liable. Other claims were resolved separately. In 2024, an insurer agreed to pay the $500,000 liability policy associated with Alex's boat, bringing the remaining wrongful death claim involving Alex to an end. So that was just for the use of his boat, basically. The insurer agreed to pay the liability policy in recent years, like in 2024 or so, which is good. The civil litigation ultimately lasted longer than Paul's criminal case ever could. And to be quite honest with you, I think regardless, it probably would have anyway, because like I said, civil litigation can tie you up for like decades sometimes. Like it can take a long time. But the immediate story brings us back to the Murdaugh family in the period between February 2019 and June 2021. Paul remained under indictment. The Beach case continued moving through court. Alex's financial records were being requested. The family's public reputation had changed. And inside Alex's professional life, millions of dollars in thefts remained concealed. Now, to understand how he kept those schemes hidden and why they were beginning to collapse, we need to understand Alex himself. Not Alex as the defendant, viewers later watched in a courtroom, but Alex as his family, coworker, clients, and communities knew him and before June of 2021. A successful attorney, a member of legal dynasty, a man people trusted with settlements, estates, and some of the most vulnerable moments of their lives, and a man who had been stealing from them for many years. By the time the boat crash lawsuit began placing pressure on Alex Murdaugh's finances, he had spent most of his adult life presenting himself as someone other people could trust. That trust was not incidental to his career, it was the foundation of it. Alex was born Richard Alexander Murdaugh in 1968 and grew up in Hampton County as part of a family whose name had already deeply connected to the legal system. He attended University of South Carolina and graduated from his law school, became an attorney, and joined the family firm, which we know as Pimped. I'm not going to say it any other way because I think it's fun to say it like that.
I think it is fun.
Its attorneys handled personal injury cases, wrongful death claims, and civil litigation, like we said. That meant Alex often met clients during some of the worst periods of their lives. A serious accident, someone had been permanently injured, a family member died, medical bills accumulating, income lost, clients that needed an attorney to deal with insurance companies, negotiate a settlement, or just take a case to court. In that position, a lawyer is entrusted with far more than just legal paperwork. The lawyer may receive settlement checks on the client's behalf, may determine how medical bills and legal fees are getting paid. They may recommend how money should be structured for a child or injured adult. Clients are expected to trust that the attorney will protect their interest. Many of Alex's clients did exactly that. He was not an unknown lawyer operating from a temporary office. He was in Murdaugh. His family had practiced law in that region for generations. His father had been elected solicitor. His brother Randy practiced at the same firm. Alex also carried a badge connected to the Fourth Circuit solicitor's office and occasionally assisted with the prosecutions there. To clients, that history could make him appear especially credible. He understood the courts, he knew the attorneys, judges, bankers, and law enforcement officers, and because many clients lived in the same small communities, they may have known him or his family long before they ever needed legal representation. People later described Alex as social, talkative, and comfortable in almost any room. He was tall, recognizable, and accustomed to approaching people with familiarity. He could make clients feel as though they were not simply dealing with an attorney, but with somebody who knew their family, understood the community, and would take care of the problem for them. And for years, that image remained largely intact. Alex earned substantial legal fees. The Murdaugh family owned valuable property. They had access to boats, vehicles, hunting land, like we said. They traveled and entertained friends. Their sons attended private schools. I mean, again, come on, guys. Like, that's a whole ass legacy family right there. But the image concealed two different financial realities. The first was that Alex had access to significant legitimate income, and the second was that he was repeatedly taking money that did not belong to him. And those two facts could be difficult to reconcile. People often imagine financial crime beginning with poverty or obvious desperation, which is not false, but I think we see that too often now. It's the other way around. They assume someone steals because there's no money available, but Alex's case was different. He was already earning more than most people in his community. You know why? Because greed. So to understand how the theft worked, it helps to understand what normally happened in the civil cases. So a client is supposed to receive a settlement, let's say of $500,000. That money may be first sent to the attorney's law firm, and then the firm deposits the check into a client trust account. And then from there, agreed legal fees that they are pre-agreed upon and case expenses are deducted. Medical providers or any other party also need to be paid out from it. And then whatever is the remaining balance belongs to the client. So they're getting paid out of it. The attorney provides an accounting and the client receives the money. The lawyer does not own the settlement. They just are temporarily responsible for safeguarding and distributing it. Almost think of like an escrow account-ish, how like with a realtor, about how like they move the money around for you during like real estate transactions. Lawyers can do the same thing. And honestly, the lawyers can even do that in a real estate transaction. If you don't want to deal with a realtor, you can go with a lawyer, and pretty much the same thing happens. And that responsibility, though, gave Alex access. In a number of cases, he used that access to redirect money. Sometimes clients were not told that a settlement had even been reached. Sometimes they were told that legal issues were delaying the payment. Yeah, this is how fucked up he was. Alex caused checks to be written in ways that made the movement of the money appear legitimate. He can then deposit or convert the funds to his own use. One of the most important tools in the scheme was an account Alex created under the name Forge, which is a legitimate company called Forge Consulting that helped arrange structured settlements. A structured settlement allows compensation to be paid over time, so it's not one immediate lump sum. Because attorneys working in personal injury law could recognize the Forge name, a check made payable to Forge was not necessarily seen suspicious to them. But Alex's account was not the legitimate Forge Consulting account. Obviously, it was just an account that he controlled. And when settlement checks were made to that account, it would appear that the money was being transferred for professional settlement planning. But instead, it was just being deposited into his account. Alex also used relationships with people inside institutions he trusted or who trusted him. One of those people was Russell Lafayette. I want to say Lafayette, but I know that's obviously not correct. That's not how it's spelled, but his name's Russell. We'll just go with that. He was an executive at Palmetto State Bank. The Murdaugh family and the Lafayette family had long-standing ties to the Hampton community, so again, probably another legacy family. Palmetto State Bank handled accounts, loans, financial transactions connected to Alex and some of his clients. Russell served as a conservator or personal representation in matters involving vulnerable clients, and that role carries a legal duty to protect the person's asset. Federal prosecutors later accused Alex and Russell of using client funds to cover Alex's loans and expenses, so he was basically in on it. And he was prosecuted separately for his involvement in the financial schemes that were connected to Alex. Another attorney, Corey Fleming, was also drawn into Alex's financial crimes. Fleming had been Alex's friend and had attended college with him. He later became involved in the handling of claims connected to the death of Gloria Satterfield, the Murdaugh's family's longtime housekeeper. This is really sad. We'll get back to that in a second. For now, the important point is that Alex's schemes did not always depend on a hacking of a computer. They depended on relationships, a banker who knew him, an attorney that trusted him, employees that processed documents, and clients who believed he was acting in their best interest. The Murdaugh name opened doors, but Alex's crimes were sustained by the confidence people placed in him personally. The victims varied. Some had suffered serious physical injuries, some had lost family members, some were children, and some lacked financial sophistication. Others simply believed that when their attorney said a settlement was still being processed, that there was just no reason to challenge him. Because again, just like with Dr. Death, you're gonna take their word for it. This is the professional. They know what they're talking about. They know what they're doing. Ridiculous. Prosecutor said it was more than 24 clients that he had schemed, and the total theft reached millions of dollars. And not every victim was defrauded in exactly the same way. He would try to change it up, basically. He would create false paperwork, misrepresent the status or values of cases. He used client money to repay loans, funds from one matter to cover obligations in another, and at times this scheme resembled financial juggling. Money came in from a settlement, some of it was used for his benefit, and then the rest was moved into other issues. And that kind of operation can survive for years as long as enough money continues flowing through the system and no one demands a complete accounting. But it does create constant pressure. Everything has to be looked at while you're doing the scheming. Like, you have to be keeping track of all of your schemes to be understanding what you're doing, basically. And Alex apparently later said that opioid addiction had played a major role in his life and his conduct. How convenient. During his murder trial, he testified that he had been struggling with pills for years. He described periods in which he took large quantities and said that addiction made him paranoid. Members of his family testified that they had confronted him about drug use and had tried to help him stop, and Maggie and Paul were apparently aware of the problem. Paul sometimes searched for pills and confronted his father when he found them. In family messages, the issue was treated as something that happened before and could happen again. Addiction provides important context, but it's not the full explanation for his financial crimes. His financial crimes are of his own doing. Addiction just kind of fueled him further. At his federal sentencing, the judge rejected the suggestion that opioid addiction adequately accounted for the scale and sophistication of the fraud, which I agree. They're like basically what I just said. There is no simple public accounting showing that every stolen dollar was spent on drugs. One, there's not going to be, and two, that's just not the matter of the fact. Like, that's not it. Some of it, like I had said, was used to cover his early financial misconduct. Some of it supported his lifestyle, and some of it remains pretty difficult to trace. And that uncertainty had fueled years of speculation. But the documented truth is already significant. Alex had substantial income. He had access to family resources and professional credit. He also carried heavy debts, borrowed repeatedly, and stole millions from people he trusted. That financial pressure around him was therefore not one unpaid bill. It was a network of obligations and deception, because when you're that fucking deep in, like, you have to, it's literally you robbing someone blind and then robbing Peter to pay Paul. Like, you know what I mean?
It's so disgusting.
It's just taking money from new clients to pay back old clients, but then to also pay your debt, and then taking this debt and then taking new debt out to pay this client. And it's like, it's just a web of deception and lies and destruction, basically.
Literally. And it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Like, why would you allow yourself to get that deep in the hole? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's insane. By 2021, Alex needed the people around him to continue believing several things at once. His law partners needed to believe that the case disbursements were legitimate. Clients needed to believe that their money was still being processed or had been properly distributed. Banks needed to continue extending credit and processing transactions. And his family needed to believe that their financial position was secure. That's not all. The attorneys in the Beach lawsuit needed to accept his representations about what he could afford. And if one part of that structure was examined too closely, it would lead to another, and then another. And that's basically what was happening. The Beach's family attorney wanted more information about his assets. Then separately, employees at Alex's law firm were beginning to examine legal fees connected to a case involving attorney Chris Wilson. Wilson was one of Alex's close friends and a fellow attorney. The two had worked together on a case that produced substantial legal fees. Approximately $792,000 in fees was supposed to be paid to Alex's firm. and instead that money was sent directly to Alex. Alex told Wilson that he needed, I just want you to know while I'm reading this out loud to you guys, in my mind I feel like Styles and Teen Wolf, where he's like connecting all of the dots like across, like that's literally what's happening in my mind right now. I think they also do that in Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I think it's Brooklyn Nine-Nine. They also do that in, that's literally what's happening in my head right now. Where was I? Instead the money. Okay. Alex told Wilson that he needed the check structured that way because of how the fees were being handled. And when the law firm later asked where the money was, Alex could not provide a legitimate explanation. So then on the morning of June 7th, 2021, the chief financial officer of PIMT confronted Alex about those missing fees. They did not immediately reveal every theft, but it created a direct and urgent problem. The questions were no longer coming only from an opposing lawyer in the boat crash case, where he could try to hide from. They were coming from inside his own firm. Alex reportedly responded by saying that the money was in his trust account and could be replaced. The issue was not resolved. Later that day, news had reached his father's office, and his father was in declining health. Oh wait, I'm sorry, I wrote that completely wrong. News reached the office that Alex's father was in declining health. There you go. Sorry, I wrote that very reversed. The financial questioning was temporarily interrupted, and that evening, Maggie and Paul were killed at Moselle. So we have word be reaching the office that his dad is in declining health, so now everything's, attention is being taken away. And that evening, Maggie and Paul were killed at Moselle. After the murders, the law firm did not immediately continue pressing Alex about the missing fees. His wife and son were dead. He was treated as a grieving partner and member of the firm. For a period of time, sympathy displaced scrutiny. At Alex's murder trial, prosecutors argued that this temporary shift was important because that said that the murders created a crisis so overwhelming that the people that were starting to question him basically turned their attention elsewhere. And the prosecution did not claim the financial problems disappeared permanently. They just argued that Alex needed time to avoid immediate exposure, time to reorganize money, time to maintain his standing. The defense attacked that logic. Killing his family, they argue, could not solve the years of financial fraud. True, but it would give him time, if that's really what was happening. The law firm would eventually ask about the money again. The Beach lawsuit would continue. Bank records would still exist. And the prosecution answered that a desperate act does not need to provide a permanent solution. Like I said, it just needs to delay the consequences of it. Whether that theory proves murder is a separate question, but it explains why Alex's financial life became such a major part of the case. Without fraud, their murders appeared to have no obvious motive. There was no significant life insurance payment on Maggie or Paul presented as the reason for the killings. Prosecutors didn't establish that Alex was pursuing a divorce settlement or that he hated his family. Witnesses generally described him as affectionate toward Maggie and Paul. The state's theory was not that Alex wanted them gone. It was that their deaths created a distraction powerful enough to interrupt the exposure of everything else. That is one of the most difficult elements of this case for many people to accept. The prosecution asked jurors to believe that a man could love his wife and son and still kill them because he believed that their deaths would preserve the life he had built. That if he could get away with it, that it would preserve his family legacy. The defense argued that this made no emotional or practical sense. And I mean, you're not necessarily wrong. Like, that's so disgustingly irrational. Like, they're not necessarily wrong, but people do crazy shit. And that debate, though, would define the trial. In June 2021, investigators did not yet know the full financial story, though. Most of Alex's clients didn't know that they had been robbed. His partners didn't understand yet the scale of the missing money. The public knew him primarily as the husband and father who had discovered 2 members of his family dead. For nearly 3 months after the killing, the financial structure remained standing. Then, in early September, it collapsed quickly. The law firm uncovered evidence that Alex had taken money. On September 3rd, 2021, he resigned. The firm contacted law enforcement and later announced that Alex had misappropriated funds. The following day, Alex reported that he had been shot beside a rural road. At first, the incident appeared to be another violent attack on a family already surrounded by tragedy. Within days, I think I do say it necessarily later, but he had made a 911 call saying, well, I said in the very beginning, he had made a 911 call saying that his family had been, it's very obvious that his family had been shot, obviously not by him, by some kind of intruder that they had been murdered by some random person. Within days, though, that account began changing. And as investigators examined the roadside shooting, the public learned that the respected attorney at the center of the Moselle murder case had been living a second life. The next chapter of the story belongs to one of the people who trusted Alex most completely, Gloria Satterfield. She had worked inside the Murdaugh family home for years. After she died following a fall at Moselle, Alex told her sons he would help them pursue an insurance claim, a settlement worth millions of dollars that would eventually get approved. Her sons never received it. They didn't even know that it existed. So he told them that he would help them. He said, listen, this is tragic. I'll help you. I'll help you get an insurance claim. And they didn't even know that it had came. Long before investigators began looking at Alex Murdaugh's finances, long before the murders at Moselle, long before the roadside shooting, there was one other woman whose life permanently became tied to the Murdaugh family, Gloria Satterfield. Unlike lawyers, bankers, and politicians, Gloria wasn't powerful, she wasn't wealthy or connected, she wasn't someone who had resources to challenge one of the most influential families in South Carolina. She was a mother, a grandmother, and for years had worked inside the Murdaugh household. She had known the family for decades. She cleaned the house. She helped care for Buster and Paul when they were kids. Family and friends later described her as dependable, hardworking, and deeply loyal. The Murdaughs often referred to her as being like family, and the phrase was repeated many, many times after her death. But as the story unfolds, it's worth asking what like family really meant to them. Because the way Gloria's family was treated after she died would become one of the clearest windows into Alex Murdaugh's character. On the morning of February 2nd, 2018, Gloria arrived at Moselle like she had countless times before. But sometime that morning, she had suffered a fall on the exterior steps of the home. And exactly what caused the fall has never been definitively established. Alex later told insurance companies that Gloria had tripped over the family's dogs, particularly one dog that's named Bubba, and became excited near the steps and caused her to lose her footing. That explanation became the basis for the insurance claim that followed. However, it's important to distinguish what is documented from what remains uncertain. There was no publicly identified eyewitnesses who saw the fall itself. Over the years, various accounts have circulated about what happened that morning, but no criminal investigation has concluded that Gloria's injuries resulted from anything other than a reported fall. What is disputed, though, is the outcome. So, we don't know how she actually fell. We just know that she had fallen and suffered severe injuries, including fractured ribs and head trauma. She had been transported to the hospital where she remained for several weeks, and then unfortunately on February 26th, 2018, she had died from complications related to those injuries. She was 57 years old, so she wasn't old.
Not at all.
Years later, after Alex's financial crimes came to light, South Carolina authorities announced that they would reopen Gloria's death for review as part of the broader Murdaugh investigations. Her body was exhumed in 2022 for an additional examination. To date, investigators have not publicly announced evidence that Gloria's death was the result of homicide. And that does matter because while there's overwhelming evidence of financial fraud after her death, there's not public evidence that the fall itself was criminal. Like, it literally could have just been an accident, but he did create financial fraud after her accident. So it does beg the question, could it have been, or could it quite literally have just been an accident that he capitalized on? Which is fucking horrible in and of itself. After Gloria died, Alex approached her sons, Tony Satterfield and Brian Harriet. Imagine their position. They just lost their mother. Alex wasn't just simply a lawyer. He was someone their mother had trusted for years. He told them that they should pursue a claim against his homeowner's insurance because, according to him, Gloria's death had happened on his property. On its face, it does sound kind of compassionate. He appears to be helping them. I mean, he's basically just letting them know, like, hey, listen, like, I'm so sorry, like, this did happen on my property, like, you should file a claim and get money out of this for her death. And, like, when you think about the fact what he does for a living, like, that does make a lot of sense that he's going to tell them to do that. It's just the fact that it was so convenient.
Mm-hmm.
And then he had recommended them hiring Corey Fleming.
Yep.
And Gloria's sons did agree because why wouldn't they? Like I said, they believed that Alex was trying to help them. The insurance negotiations then followed, and eventually 2 insurance companies agreed to settle the claims. Combined, those settlements totaled approximately $4.3 million.
Millions.
That's a crazy amount of money.
Millions of dollars.
And the worst part is that Tony and Brian never received it. Not a single
Not
portion,
a cent.
installment, literally nothing. They didn't even know that the settlement existed. For years, they believed the legal process was still ongoing because, again, these are civil suits. They can take a very long time. They just simply assumed that it just took a long time when it actually had been paid out pretty quickly. Just not to them. And this is where Alex's fraud becomes both sophisticated but deeply personal. Settlement checks were issued, and instead of the money reaching Gloria's sons, it was redirected to that account called Forge. The similarity made a transaction between Forge and Forge Consulting appear routine. On paper, it looked like the settlement funds were being handled through a legitimate financial intermediary. Instead, prosecutors later showed that the money was diverted into accounts Alex controlled. According to the investigators, those funds were then used for Alex's own purposes, paying debts, moving money between accounts, supporting the increasingly unstable financial life he had built. I mean, just think about the betrayal involved. Gloria had spent years helping raise his children. She worked inside his home. She took care of them. And after her death, her sons entrusted him to help them navigate something extremely difficult, and he just stole their fucking money that he told them to get.
I just can't. This man is like,
and it was
so diabolical.
Literally. The insurance companies believed that they had fulfilled their obligation. Court documents reflected that settlements had been reached. The legal system appeared to have done exactly what it was supposed to have done. And technically it did. But the people the money belonged to had no idea that any of this even happened. Because Alex. And then everything changed after the murders at Moselle. As reporters and investigators began looking into Alex's finances, more questions started to surface. You're good. One journalist who played a significant role in bringing renewed attention to several Murdaugh-related cases was Mandy Matney. Her reporting on the boat crash eventually expanded into broader investigations involving the family, including Gloria's settlement. Around the same time, attorney Eric Bland agreed to represent Gloria's sons. Bland began requesting settlement records, bank documents, insurance paperwork, and court filings. As those records came together, the fraud became impossible to ignore. Millions of dollars had disappeared, and the money trail led back to Alex. And the investigation didn't stop here. Attorney Corey Fleming eventually pleaded guilty to criminal charges connected to his role in the scheme. Bank executive Russell Lafitte, I think is how you say it, was also prosecuted in connection with financial crimes involving Alex and client funds. What had once appeared to be isolated misconduct now looked like an interconnected network of deception built on trust and professional relationships. Every new document investigators uncovered raised another question. How many victims were there? How many settlements had been manipulated? How long had this been happening? The answers just kept getting bigger and bigger. And we obviously don't want to lose Gloria herself within this, because financial fraud is easy to reduce to numbers. But Gloria wasn't famous. She wasn't politically connected. She wasn't wealthy. She had just spent years caring for another family and her death. And I don't mean just, I mean like, this is what she did. She spent years caring for another family, and after her death, the people she left behind believed that they were being helped, and instead they also became victims. Once when they lost their mother, and again when the compensation intended for them disappeared. When Alex eventually admitted to many of his financial crimes, he acknowledged stealing from clients. The documentary evidence surrounding Gloria's settlement, bank records, settlement documents, and witness testimony became one of the clearest examples of how his schemes operated. By then, the image of the respected hometown attorney had largely collapsed. But despite everything investigators had uncovered, the public still didn't know the full story. Because in early September of 2021, just 3 months after Maggie and Paul were killed, Alex Murdaugh would call 911 once again. This time, like I had said earlier, I mentioned it, he would claim someone had tried to murder him on the side of a rural South Carolina road. At first, it looked like another shocking act of violence, and within days, investigators would begin to suspect something entirely different. That single roadside shooting would accelerate the collapse of everything Alex had spent years trying to protect. For nearly 3 months after Maggie and Paul's murder, Alex occupied a very different place in the public eye than he would just a few weeks later. He was viewed primarily as a victim, a husband who had discovered his wife and youngest son murdered, a son whose father, Randolph Murdaugh III, had just died days after the killings. So literally he murdered his wife and son, and his dad died 3 days later. Literally horrible.
Terrible.
A respected attorney navigating unimaginable grief while investigators searched for whoever had committed the murders. Law enforcement publicly stated there was no immediate danger to the community, but they had not yet identified a suspect. Tips poured in, reward money was offered, rumors spread throughout Hampton County. Some people believed the murders were connected to the 2019 boat crash. Others speculated about revenge, drugs, or unknown enemies. I mean, pretty common stuff to be speculating when it comes to a legacy family and something happening.
Yeah.
The uncertainty created an information vacuum, and into that vacuum poured countless theories. Through it all, Alex maintained that he had no idea who killed Maggie and Paul. He appeared at his father's funeral. He spoke publicly only through attorneys. Friends described him as devastated. The image presented to the public was that of a man whose entire life had been shattered in a matter of days. But behind the scenes, the financial question that had briefly paused after the murders had quietly returned. Employees at Pimped continued looking into missing legal fees. The Beach lawsuit remained active. People who had trusted Alex with settlement money were unknowingly moving closer, discovering that it was gone. And the temporary pause created by the murders was starting to end. And then came Labor Day weekend. September 4th, 2021, just before 1:30 in the afternoon, Alex called 911. Yet again. This time, he reported that he had been shot while changing a tire on Old Salkatchie Road, I think it is. That sounds right. A rural road in Hampton County. According to Alex's initial account, he had pulled his Mercedes SUV to the side of the road after experiencing a flat tire. While outside the vehicle, he said a blue pickup truck passed him, and then the truck turned around. A man inside allegedly asked Alex if he was having car trouble, and according to Alex, the driver then pulled out a gun, shot him in the head before speeding away. What? Sir, he shot you in the head? He just shot. Okay.
Huh.
All right.
Okay. Cool.
We're gonna keep going. I don't want to, I don't know. The husband of a murdered woman and child had now survived an apparent assassination attempt. Almost immediately, people wondered whether the incidents were connected, obviously. Whoever killed Maggie and Paul, returning to finish the job, was someone systematically targeting the Murdaugh family. News outlets across the country picked up the story within hours. Photographs showed Alex in the hospital with what appeared to be a head wound. Once again, he looked like the victim. But investigators quickly noticed something unusual. Alex's injuries were certainly real, were far less severe than many people initially believed. The bullet had caused what doctors described as a superficial wound. It had not penetrated his skull. It had not caused catastrophic brain trauma. He was treated and released from the hospital surprisingly quickly. And that alone was I'm just so confused about that whole scenario.
I'm so confused about that.
Gunshot wounds vary tremendously, obviously, but as investigators reconstructed the scene, more questions started to emerge. Where was the truck? Who was the shooter? Why had no one reported seeing a blue pickup matching Alex's description? How were you shot like that? That would be my question. As investigators continued working, Alex made another announcement that caught the public's eye. On September 6th, just 2 days after the shooting, he released a statement saying he was entering rehabilitation for opioid addiction. Jesus Christ, what was that? The statement acknowledged that he had struggled with addiction for years. It also announced that he was resigning from his law firm. To many people, this seemed like an extraordinary amount of bad news arriving all at once. A double homicide, the death of his father, shooting, drug addiction, resignation. What the public didn't yet know was that Alex hadn't just simply resigned. The day before the roadside shooting, his partners at Pimped had confronted him with evidence that he had stolen money from the firm. After examining missing legal fees connected to attorney Chris Wilson, the firm determined Alex had misappropriated client funds, and he was forced out on September 3rd. The law firm reported the thefts to law enforcement. That timeline is incredibly important because the confrontation happened first, then resignation, then shooting, not the other way around like he had tried to say. Investigators now had to consider whether the roadside shooting was actually what Alex had claimed, or whether it had served another purpose. Only days later, the story changed dramatically. The South Carolina Law Enforcement Division announced that they had arrested Curtis Edward Smith. Most people knew him simply as Cousin Eddie. Interesting. Despite the nickname, the two men were not actually cousins by blood. Smith was someone Alex had known for years. According to investigators, Alex had contacted Smith before the shooting. The prosecution alleged that the roadside encounter had not been a random attack at all. Instead, they claimed Alex arranged it himself. Initially, investigators alleged that Alex had intended for Smith to kill him so that his surviving son, Buster, could collect approximately $10 million in life insurance. That exclamation dominated headlines for weeks. It painted a picture of a desperate man willing to orchestrate his own death. But as even more evidence emerged, that theory became complicated. Questions arose about whether such a life insurance policy even existed in the form originally reported. Investigators eventually focused less on the insurance motive and more on the fact that Alex had orchestrated a false narrative about being attacked. Smith denied trying to murder Alex, and he claimed that Alex had asked him to come to the roadside but disputed key aspects of the state's allegations. The legal proceedings involving Smith became their own complicated story, separate from Alex's murder case. Regardless of the precise motive, one fact had been kind of impossible to ignore. Alex's original version of events no longer matched the evidence investigators believed that they had uncovered. The man who had twice called 911 as the apparent victim of violent crimes was now under intense scrutiny himself. Public perceptions shifted almost overnight. People who had spent months asking who killed Maggie and Paul began asking a different question. What else has Alex lied about? That question changed everything, because once investigators stopped assuming Alex was simply another victim, they began examining every aspect of his life through a different lens. Financial records, phone records, settlement documents, bank accounts, property transactions. Sorry, my toddler. I'm not laughing at this. My toddler's in the background. Relationships, everything. And the roadside shooting didn't prove Alex had murdered Maggie and Paul, but it dramatically changed the way investigators... Hold on. She's literally standing at the door crying. We're about to be done. More criminal charges followed. The carefully constructed image of respected attorney, devoted family man, and grieving husband was unraveling faster than anyone could have imagined. Literally about to be done. Oh my god, she can't wait. She never cries for me like this. This is insane. Okay. Looking back, it's remarkable how quickly everything collapsed. For decades, Alex Murdaugh had maintained the trust of clients, colleagues, friends, and his family and his community. Once that trust broke, it didn't fracture one piece at a time, it shattered. And investigators now face the task of determining whether the same man who had orchestrated years of financial deception had also lied about the most important night of his life. Because while the financial investigations were expanding, detectives investigating Maggie and Paul's murders had quietly been collecting evidence of their own. Evidence that would eventually center on one of the smallest details imaginable: a cell phone video recorded by Paul Murdaugh. Murdaugh. I don't know why I'm going back to Murdaugh. Just minutes before he died. The video would become one of the most significant pieces of evidence in the entire case, and it would fundamentally change the direction of the murder investigation. And this is where we're going to end part 1. And I'm so sorry, my child is literally screaming in the background, so we're going to end the episode. And I will come back with more for you guys in part 2. So whether it's crime, conspiracy, or straight up spooky, we're gonna keep talking about it. Like, follow, comment, and stay tuned for new episodes each week, because it'll just keep getting dark and spooky from here. So stay nosy and stay spooky, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Happy 1 year.